Captain Linda Morrison had been searching the dark emptiness of space for 3 years without finding anything worth mentioning. The vast ship beneath her feet hummed with the sounds of life support systems and distant machinery. She stood at the observation deck with her hands pressed against the cool glass, staring out at the swirling nebula before her. Somewhere out there was intelligent life. She could feel it in her bones, though her instruments had so far detected nothing but empty space and frozen asteroids. Her crew of 40 scientists and explorers had begun to lose faith. Some whispered that they would return to Earth without any discoveries at all, and she would be remembered as the captain who led a failed mission into oblivion. Then the scanners lit up with activity. Dr. Amy Patterson burst through the doors of the observation deck, her face flushed with excitement and her hair falling loose from its neat bun. She had been working in the sensor laboratory for the past 6 hours without sleep, analyzing strange readings that did not match any known signatures in their database. Amy's voice trembled as she spoke to Linda about the discovery. There was a planet 3 days away that was radiating energy patterns unlike anything humanity had ever recorded. The patterns were too organized to be natural phenomena. They had to be artificial. They had to mean that someone lived there. Linda felt her heart leap into her throat. This was what they had traveled so far to find. This was the moment that would define her entire career and the future of human exploration. She immediately called for an emergency meeting of her command staff. Commander Patricia Wells arrived first, her military bearing evident in every step she took. Patricia had been chosen for this mission because of her tactical knowledge and her ability to keep calm under pressure. Behind her came the rest of the team, each one curious about what Linda had called them together to discuss. When Linda explained what Amy had found, the room erupted in excited conversation. Some crew members wanted to approach the planet with caution. Others argued for immediate contact. Patricia suggested sending in reconnaissance drones first to gather information before risking human lives. But Linda had already decided. They would approach openly and honestly. If there were intelligent beings on that planet, they deserved to know that humans came in peace. Within hours, the ship changed its trajectory and began moving toward the mysterious world. The closer they drew to the planet, the more detailed their scans became. Amy worked furiously to decode the energy patterns, trying to understand what she was seeing. The planet's surface was covered in massive crystalline structures that towered like mountains into the sky. These structures were not random growths. They were arranged in precise geometric patterns that suggested intentional design and purpose. The atmosphere was breathable for humans, though it contained chemical compounds that did not exist on Earth. The gravity was slightly lighter than what humans were accustomed to, but not so different that it would cause serious problems. As the ship descended toward the planet, everyone aboard held their breath. This was the moment of first contact. Everything they did now would determine how an alien civilization perceived humanity. Linda stood on the bridge with Patricia and Amy, watching the purple and blue planet grow larger on their screens. The landing site had been chosen carefully, a flat plain surrounded by those magnificent crystalline structures. When the ship finally touched down, a profound silence fell over the crew. They had traveled further than any humans before them, and made it to an alien world without disaster. Linda pulled on her environmental suit and checked it twice before heading to the airlock. Patricia insisted on coming along despite her role as a military commander. Amy wanted to collect samples, so she joined the landing party as well. 2 other crew members, security specialists named Grace and Monica, completed the team. When the airlock doors opened and they stepped out onto the alien soil, Linda felt like she was walking through a dream. The sky above them was a shade of purple that seemed to shift and change in the light. The ground beneath their feet was smooth and warm, almost like walking on polished stone. The crystalline structures were even more impressive up close than they had appeared from orbit. Light seemed to flow through them in waves, creating patterns and colors that hurt the eyes if you stared too long. Amy immediately began setting up her equipment to analyze the composition of the crystals. She took samples carefully, always conscious of not damaging the structures. Patricia and Grace scanned the area for any signs of danger or hidden weapons. Monica stood guard, her hand resting on the communication device at her hip. Then they appeared. Figures emerged from between the crystalline structures without making a sound. At first, Linda thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. The beings seemed to shimmer and shift, as if they were not entirely solid. But as they drew closer, their forms became clearer. They were tall and elegant, standing nearly 8 feet high. Their skin was the color of polished silver, reflecting the light of the purple sky. Their eyes were large and luminous, containing depths of intelligence and something else that Linda could not quite identify. There were 7 of them, and they moved with a grace and precision that seemed almost choreographed. The lead alien stepped forward, and Linda felt her throat go dry. Everything depended on what happened in the next few moments. The being raised one hand in what might have been a gesture of greeting or acknowledgement. Linda slowly raised her own hand in response, mirroring the gesture. The alien's mouth formed a shape that might have been a smile, though it was difficult to tell given how different their facial structure was from humans. When the alien spoke, the sound was like nothing Linda had ever heard before. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, with harmonics that seemed to bypass her ears and speak directly to her emotions. But then her translation device crackled to life and the alien's words became clear. The being introduced herself as Zira, and she welcomed the humans to her world. She said that her people had been expecting visitors from Earth eventually. She said that they had seen the humans coming in visions and in calculations that spanned centuries. The humans were finally here, and Zira's people were ready to receive them with open hearts and open minds. Linda found herself unable to speak for a long moment. How could the aliens have known that humans were coming? They had only detected the planet days ago. How could anyone have predicted their arrival with such accuracy? But before she could ask these questions, Zira gestured toward the crystalline structures and invited the humans to follow. The alien women turned and walked back toward their city, moving with that same flowing grace that had captured Linda's attention from the moment they appeared. Patricia placed a hand on Linda's arm and whispered a warning about trusting these beings too quickly. But something in Linda's chest told her that Zira meant no harm. The aliens seemed genuinely pleased to meet humans. There was no hostility in their movements or their words. Monica and Grace looked to Linda for guidance, waiting to see if they would follow the aliens deeper into this strange new world. Linda took a deep breath, adjusted her suit to make sure everything was secure, and began walking toward the crystalline structures. Behind her, her team followed, stepping into a future that no human had ever experienced before. The crystalline city grew larger as they approached it, revealing details that had been invisible from a distance. The structures seemed to be connected by bridges made of the same material, suspended in the air without any visible support. The crystals themselves pulsed with light, creating a gentle illumination that made the entire city glow from within. Zira led them through winding paths that seemed to shift and change subtly as they walked. Finally, they came to a large open chamber within the tallest structure. Inside, 6 other alien women were waiting, each one radiating intelligence and purpose in equal measure. Zira led the human team deeper into the crystalline chamber where the other alien women waited in a formation that suggested both respect and ceremonial importance. Linda recognized immediately that she was in the presence of leaders and thinkers. Each woman stood with a composure and confidence that spoke of vast experience and knowledge. Zira introduced them one by one, and Linda struggled to remember the names as they were spoken in that melodic language before being translated by her device. The first woman was named Mina, a researcher who had dedicated 200 years to the study of consciousness itself. She explained through the translator that she was trying to understand the nature of awareness and how it manifested in different species across the universe. Mina's eyes held a gentle curiosity as she looked at Linda and the other humans. She said that human consciousness was particularly fascinating because it combined logic with emotion in ways that most advanced species had learned to separate. Mina wanted to understand how humans made decisions when their hearts and minds were in conflict with each other. Next came Cassidy, an engineer whose work had transformed her entire civilization's relationship with energy. She had developed systems that could harness power from the quantum vacuum itself, creating unlimited energy without producing waste or pollution. Cassidy had a practical mind that focused on solving problems and improving the quality of life for her people. She was interested in how humans had managed to survive on Earth, despite their tendency to damage their own environment. She wondered what drives pushed humans forward, even when their actions often harmed the world around them. Ruby was an artist and a creator, whose work had changed the way her people perceived reality itself. She explained that she used crystalline matrices to encode visual and emotional experiences directly into objects. Anyone who touched her creations would experience the emotions and perceptions that Ruby had embedded within them. Ruby's work was experimental and sometimes controversial, but she believed that art had the power to create understanding between different species. She was eager to understand human art and what humans considered beautiful or meaningful. Sophia was the oldest of the group, a historian who had personally witnessed 3,000 years of her civilization's development. She moved slowly but with deliberate purpose, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of enormous age and accumulated wisdom. Sophia had spent centuries studying other civilizations in the galaxy, trying to understand the patterns of rise and fall that seemed to repeat throughout cosmic history. She believed that humanity represented something unique, a species that combined wisdom with foolishness in equal measure, and had somehow survived despite this contradiction. Yara was a strategist and planner whose mind worked several moves ahead of present events. She had developed frameworks for understanding how different species might interact, and what consequences could emerge from various choices and actions. Yara had foreseen that humans would eventually discover her world, though the exact timeline had remained uncertain until very recently. She was interested in how humans planned for the future and what methods they used to make decisions that would affect generations not yet born. Finally, there was Hope, a young explorer whose real age was probably older than Linda's entire family line, yet who still possessed the energy and enthusiasm of someone experiencing life for the first time. Hope longed to see more of the universe than her homeworld could offer. She had grown up reading about distant worlds and different species, and had always dreamed of traveling among the stars. Meeting humans was the most exciting thing that had ever happened to her. Hope's questions came rapid fire, asking about Earth and its oceans and mountains, and the weather systems that humans had to adapt to. Linda found herself answering questions for hours while Amy worked with Mina on collaborative research projects. Patricia sat with Cassidy and Yara, discussing topics of defense and strategy that seemed to cross the boundaries between species. Grace and Monica had been given a tour of the crystalline structures by Hope, who showed them the remarkable technology that the aliens had developed over their long history. The exchanges were educational and surprisingly comfortable, considering that only hours earlier no one had known that beings like these even existed. As the day progressed in that strange purple light, Linda began to understand something fundamental about Zira and her people. They were not conquerors or empire builders. They had no desire to dominate other species or impose their will on the galaxy. Instead, they were scholars and seekers of knowledge, driven by curiosity and the desire to understand the vast universe in which they lived. They had achieved technological mastery not to control others but to free themselves from the harsh constraints of survival so that they could devote their existence to learning and creating. Zara took Linda to an observation point high, within the tallest crystalline structure. From there, they could see the entire planet stretched out below them. Zira explained that her people had lived in harmony with this world for over 50,000 years. They had never waged wars of conquest. They had never enslaved other beings. When they encountered other species, they chose to observe from a distance rather than interfere. But humans were different. Humans possessed something that even the most advanced alien civilizations had largely lost. Humans still held on to hope. Humans still dreamed of impossible things and worked tirelessly to achieve them, despite overwhelming obstacles. Linda asked Zira how her people had known that humans would arrive on this day at this time. Zira's answer was complex and philosophical. She explained that her people had developed the ability to perceive probability waves and potential futures through quantum analysis. They could see the branching paths of possibility that extended forward in time. Most species who achieved this ability became paralyzed by too many options, but Zira's people had learned to act decisively even when faced with uncertainty. They had simply prepared for the most likely scenarios and waited for the future to unfold. As the sun began to set, casting the purple sky into shades of deep indigo and violet, Linda felt a profound sense of connection with Zira. The alien woman spoke about her hopes for the universe and her belief that different species could learn from each other and grow together. She expressed hope that humans would choose wisdom over fear, cooperation over domination, and learning over conquest. But she also acknowledged that such choices were not guaranteed. Many species had stood at similar crossroads and chosen the wrong path, leading to conflict and suffering. That night, the humans were given quarters within the crystalline city. The rooms were unlike anything they had expected. with walls that seemed to be transparent from the inside but reflected light from the outside. The beds were comfortable, though shaped differently from human furniture. The air itself seemed to carry a subtle scent that was both pleasant and energizing. Before Linda fell asleep, she received a message from her ship. Dr. Patterson had sent it through her personal communicator. The message was brief but important. The sensors had detected unusual activity from Earth. A military fleet was being prepared. Someone on Earth knew about the alien civilization and wanted to take aggressive action. The humans on the planet had 3 weeks before the fleet would arrive. 3 weeks to figure out what should happen when a warlike species encountered a peaceful one. Linda did not sleep that night. She lay in the strange, transparent room and stared at the ceiling, her mind racing with the implications of the message she had received. A military fleet was coming. Someone back on Earth had decided that the discovery of an advanced alien civilization was an opportunity for conquest rather than understanding. She thought about her orders, stored safely in the ship's database. She had been instructed to gather data and prepare the location for occupation. At the time, those orders had seemed routine, just part of the military protocol that governed exploration missions. But now they felt like a burden that threatened to destroy everything that was beginning between humans and these remarkable beings. When morning came with its strange purple dawn, Linda knew she had to tell Zira the truth. Keeping such vital information secret would be a betrayal of the trust that was beginning to form. She requested a private meeting with the alien leader, and Zira agreed immediately. They met in a small chamber within the crystalline structures, a room where the walls seemed to absorb sound and create an atmosphere of complete privacy. Linda took a deep breath and began explaining the situation. She told Zira about the military faction on Earth, about their desire for technology and resources, about the plans to send an invasion force to seize control of the planet. Zira listened without interruption, her luminous eyes never wavering from Linda's face. When Linda finished speaking, there was a long silence. Then Zira did something that surprised the human captain. She smiled, and the expression was clearly one of satisfaction rather than concern. Zira explained that she had seen this possibility in her probability calculations. She had known that there was a significant chance that some humans would choose the path of conquest when confronted with advanced technology. She said that this response was actually quite predictable given humanity's evolutionary history. Humans were young as a species. They still operated from survival instincts that had been useful when they competed for resources on their home world. Zira revealed something that made Linda's heart skip a beat. The alien woman said that her people had already developed defensive measures to protect against any military incursion. They could destroy an attacking fleet without significant difficulty. They could shield their planet from orbital bombardment. They could even render human weapons completely useless if they chose to do so. But Zira did not want to do any of these things. She believed that a better path existed. She believed that some humans possessed the capacity for growth and change. She wanted to give those humans the opportunity to choose a different future. Over the next several days, Linda worked with Amy and Patricia to create a comprehensive report about the alien civilization. They documented the technology they had observed, the philosophical principles that governed Zira's people, and the remarkable achievements they had made. But they also made recommendations for peaceful contact and cultural exchange. Patricia was skeptical about such an approach. She believed that humans could not be trusted to choose wisdom when power was available to them. But even Patricia had to admit that the alternative was devastating. An invasion of this planet would likely result in the destruction of humanity's best hope for becoming something more than a warlike species. Mina approached Linda with an interesting proposal. The researcher wanted to conduct a study of human consciousness alongside her ongoing research into other forms of awareness. She suggested that understanding how human minds worked might provide insights that would help aliens and humans communicate more effectively. Amy was thrilled by the opportunity and volunteered immediately to participate in the study. Patricia was more cautious, concerned that the aliens might be gathering intelligence about human weaknesses and vulnerabilities. But Mina's work seemed genuinely focused on understanding rather than exploitation. Cassidy spent considerable time with Patricia, asking detailed questions about human conflict and warfare. The alien engineer wanted to understand why humans seemed so driven to compete and dominate. Patricia explained about scarce resources and territorial instincts inherited from humanity's evolutionary past. But she also spoke about human courage and sacrifice, about the noble impulses that sometimes motivated humans to fight for causes larger than themselves. Cassidy seemed fascinated by this contradiction. She said that her people had largely eliminated scarcity through technology, and this had removed the primary driver of conflict from their civilization. She wondered what humans might accomplish if they were freed from the constant need to struggle for survival. Ruby spent time with every member of the human team, trying to understand what they considered beautiful or meaningful. She created small crystalline objects that encoded human music and art. When the humans touched these creations, they experienced their own cultural products reflected back through an alien perspective. It was an unsettling but profoundly moving experience. Humans who listened to Beethoven through Ruby's work experienced something deeper and more complex than they had ever felt before. The art itself was elevated, transformed into something that transcended the species that had created it. Hope and Monica became close friends during this period. The young alien explorer and the human security specialist spent hours sharing stories about their respective worlds. Hope was particularly interested in hearing about human exploration and adventure. Monica told her about mountain climbers and deep-sea divers, about astronauts who had risked their lives to reach the moon. Hope was fascinated by humans who deliberately placed themselves in danger for the sake of discovery and accomplishment. She said that her people avoided danger whenever possible, preferring to explore through technology and simulation rather than through direct physical experience. But as the days passed, Linda became increasingly anxious about the approaching deadline. The military fleet from Earth would arrive in less than 2 weeks now. She still had not received any response to her initial message recommending peaceful contact. She tried sending more communications, but the response from Earth's military leadership was always the same. They wanted her to gather more intelligence and prepare the location for invasion. They were not interested in diplomacy or understanding. They wanted conquest. Sophia found Linda sitting alone in one of the high chambers, staring out at the alien landscape. The ancient historian sat beside her and said nothing for a long time. Then Sophia began to speak about the history of other species who had stood at similar crossroads. She told stories of civilizations that had chosen conquest and had ultimately destroyed themselves through violence and greed. She also told stories of species who had chosen cooperation and had flourished beyond their own imagination. History, Sophia said, was not predetermined. The future was not written in stone. At crucial moments, individual choices mattered. One person's decision could change the course of entire civilizations. Sophia asked Linda what she believed was the right thing to do. The question hung in the air between them, heavy with significance. Linda knew that her answer would determine not just her own future but potentially the future of both species. She could follow her orders and prepare the planet for invasion. She could remain neutral and let events unfold without her intervention. Or she could actively work against the military fleet from Earth, which would mean committing treason against her own species and the government she had sworn to serve. It was an impossible choice, and yet a choice had to be made. Linda made her decision on a clear morning when the purple sky was particularly bright and the crystalline structures seemed to glow with inner fire. She called an urgent meeting with Zira and the entire scientific council. The meeting took place in the largest chamber within the city, a space so vast that it seemed to stretch forever. When all the alien women were gathered, Linda stood and revealed everything. She told them about her orders to prepare the planet for invasion. She explained the timelines and the military force that was approaching. She confessed that she had the ability to warn Earth about Zira's defensive capabilities, but doing so would be considered treason against her own species. Zira listened carefully as Linda spoke, and when the human captain finished, the alien leader asked a simple question. Zira asked what Linda would choose if she were forced to select between her loyalty to Earth and her commitment to peace and understanding. Linda felt tears forming in her eyes as she spoke her answer. She said that she could not be part of an invasion that would result in the conquest and likely enslavement of an intelligent species. She said that she had come to this planet expecting to find enemies or at least rivals. Instead, she had found teachers and friends. She said that some things were more important than following orders, and peace was one of them. Yara, the strategist, stepped forward with a proposal. She suggested that the humans on the planet had the power to change the outcome of what was coming. They could send a message to Earth that was truthful about what they had found, but that presented the situation in a way that might appeal to the better nature of humanity's leadership. They could describe the alien civilization as peaceful, and the technology as available for sharing rather than conquest. They could frame the future as a partnership between species rather than as a war between enemies. It was a long shot, but it was possible that enough humans might choose wisdom over greed. Patricia stepped forward and asked a difficult question. She wanted to know what would happen if the military leadership on Earth chose to invade anyway. Would Zira's people defend themselves? Would they destroy the human fleet? Would they consider all humans to be enemies who needed to be eliminated? Zira's response was measured and thoughtful. She said that her people would defend their world if necessary, but that they would do so in the least violent way possible. They would disable the human weapons and disable the human ships. They would force the military personnel to leave rather than kill them. But if humans kept attacking, eventually even Zira's people would be forced to escalate their defensive measures. Ruby asked something that surprised everyone. The artist wanted to know if the humans would be willing to stay on the alien planet. She suggested that the human team could become ambassadors between the two species. They could live among Zira's people and help explain humanity to the aliens. In exchange, they could gather knowledge and technology that they could eventually share with Earth. Hope supported this idea enthusiastically, saying that she wanted the humans to see her world and understand her people properly. Monica and Grace also expressed willingness to stay, though they looked to Linda for guidance. Amy spoke up with a scientific perspective. She said that the knowledge contained within the crystalline structures could transform human understanding of physics, energy, medicine, and countless other fields. If this knowledge could be shared with Earth's scientific community, it might help shift the balance toward peaceful cooperation. She suggested that a team of Earth's best scientists and philosophers should be invited to the planet as soon as possible. These individuals could learn directly from Zira's people, and then return to Earth as advocates for peaceful contact. Mina proposed something even more ambitious. She suggested that a full cultural exchange program be established. Young humans could come to the alien planet to study with Zira's people. Young aliens could visit Earth and experience human civilization firsthand. Over time, the two species would come to know each other not as abstractions or statistics but as individuals with dreams and fears and hopes for the future. Understanding, she believed, was the best defense against conflict. Linda agreed to remain on the planet and coordinate the peace initiative. She sent a new message to Earth's leadership, dramatically different from her previous communications. In this message, she explained that she had discovered evidence of an advanced alien civilization that was willing to share technology and knowledge with humanity. She said that war was unnecessary, and that cooperation would benefit both species far more than conquest ever could. She requested that a diplomatic delegation be sent to negotiate peaceful contact. She explained that the window for this decision was closing rapidly, and the choices made now would determine the future of both civilizations. The response from Earth took days to arrive. When it finally came, it was not what Linda had feared, but not quite what she had hoped for either. A split was occurring within human leadership. The military faction wanted to proceed with invasion plans, but scientists and philosophers had formed a coalition that opposed the invasion. They argued that attacking an advanced civilization would be foolish and dangerous. They argued that peaceful contact would bring more benefits to humanity than conquest ever could. The debate was fierce and the outcome remained uncertain. With 9 days left before the military fleet would arrive, Linda called another meeting. This time Zira proposed something that made even Patricia pause in shock. The alien leader said that her people could broadcast a message to Earth. They could send information directly to billions of humans on the planet. They could show humans what Zira's civilization had achieved and what they offered. They could let humans know that peace was possible, but such action would be intervention in human affairs, something that violated the principles Zira's people had followed for centuries. Using this power would be an act of desperation, a last resort when all other options had failed. Hope suggested a different approach. The young explorer proposed that Zira's people could enhance the human team's communication capabilities. Linda and her crew could send higher quality messages to Earth, including images and data that would make the reality of the alien civilization unmistakable. They could provide scientific proof that would convince even the skeptics. This approach respected human autonomy, while giving humanity the best possible information to make an informed decision. They chose Hope's path. Working with Cassidy, Amy enhanced the ship's communication systems. Within hours, they were sending detailed messages and images to Earth. The messages showed the crystalline city in all its glory. They showed Zira and the Scientific Council. They showed the technology that the aliens possessed. They showed videos of peaceful interaction between humans and aliens. They showed everything that Linda wanted Earth's people to see and understand. The responses began coming back within days. Scientists from around Earth were demanding access to the communications. Religious leaders were saying that this was proof of creation's vastness. Artists were creating works inspired by the alien civilization. The military faction was losing ground in the public consciousness, as more people learned about the possibility of peaceful contact. But the military fleet was still coming. Its commanders had been ordered to proceed regardless of public opinion. The clock was ticking down toward confrontation. With only 3 days remaining before the military fleet would arrive, Linda received an encrypted message directly from Earth's president. The message was brief but profoundly significant. The president explained that public pressure had become overwhelming. Millions of humans were demanding peaceful contact with the alien civilization. Scientists and philosophers were calling for a diplomatic mission rather than military action. The president had used her authority to override the military faction's invasion plans. A diplomatic delegation was being assembled and would be sent to the alien planet within the week. A new era was beginning, the president wrote, and it was being shaped by the choices that humans had made to value peace over conquest. When Linda relayed this news to Zira, the alien leader's response was one of cautious optimism. Zira said that her probability calculations had shown this outcome as possible, but not certain. The fact that humans had chosen wisdom over fear suggested something profound about the species. Humans, Zira said, seem to have an extraordinary capacity for change and growth even at the last possible moment. This quality was rare among the civilizations Zira's people had studied. It gave her genuine hope for the future of both species. Yara worked with Linda to prepare for the arrival of the diplomatic delegation. They designed protocols for greeting Earth's representatives. They prepared presentations that would explain Zira's civilization and its philosophy. They arranged accommodation within the crystalline structures. They created translation systems that would ensure clear communication between human diplomats and alien leaders. Every detail was carefully considered to ensure that this first official contact between species would set a positive tone for all future interactions. Patricia made an important decision regarding her role. She told Linda that she would be remaining on the planet to serve as a liaison between human military interests and alien security concerns. Patricia explained that she had spent her entire career focused on conflict and defense, but for the first time in her life, she wanted to work toward preventing conflict instead of preparing for it. She wanted to be part of building something new, a relationship between species that could transcend the history of war and conquest that had defined human civilization. Grace and Monica chose to stay as well. They had formed genuine friendships with members of Zira's community. Grace had become particularly close with Mina, working together on projects that blended human intuition with alien logic. Monica and Hope had become inseparable companions, planning explorations of the alien world and the galaxy beyond. Both human security specialists had come to believe that their true purpose was to serve as bridges between species rather than as instruments of conflict. Amy's decision was the most significant of all. The scientist announced that she would spend the next 5 years living on the alien planet and studying alongside Zira's scientific council. She would learn their methods and their knowledge, and then she would return to Earth to teach other humans what she had learned. Amy believed that the most important work she could do with her life was to facilitate the exchange of knowledge between species. She believed that science and technology could be the common language that allowed humans and aliens to understand each other at the deepest levels. Linda made the most dramatic choice of all. She sent a formal letter to Earth's military command announcing her resignation from the Space Force. She explained that she could no longer serve an organization that was willing to wage war on an innocent and peaceful civilization. She said that she was choosing to remain on the alien planet and work as a cultural ambassador. She said that her primary loyalty was now to peace and understanding, rather than to any particular species or government. The letter sparked enormous controversy on Earth, but it also inspired others. Several other military officers resigned their positions to protest the previous invasion plans. A civil rights movement began on Earth, focused on ensuring that humanity's future would be defined by wisdom, rather than by military might. When the diplomatic delegation finally arrived on the alien planet, the entire human team was there to greet them. The delegation included scientists, philosophers, artists, and business leaders. It also included representatives from various governments and religious traditions. These were Earth's best minds, people who believed that contact with an advanced civilization offered humanity the opportunity to evolve and improve itself. Zira and her council greeted the delegation with warmth and openness. Over the following weeks, extraordinary exchanges took place. Human scientists learned about the crystalline structures and the technology embedded within them. They learned about the methods Zira's people used to perceive probability and calculate possible futures. They learned about the renewable energy systems that could provide unlimited power without environmental damage. Alien scholars learned about human art and music and literature. They learned about human spiritual traditions and philosophical thought. They learned about human resilience and creativity in the face of adversity. Sophia sat with Earth's philosophers and historians and shared her 3,000 years of knowledge. She told them about the rise and fall of civilizations across the galaxy. She spoke about the patterns she had observed, about how some species flourished by choosing cooperation, while others destroyed themselves through endless conflict. She suggested that humanity stood at a crossroads, where their choices would determine whether they became a species known for wisdom or a species remembered for their capacity for destruction. Ruby presented her artistic work to the delegation and was moved by how deeply it affected the visiting humans. She created new pieces incorporating human cultural elements alongside alien artistic traditions. These works transcended the boundaries between species and spoke to universal themes of beauty and truth and meaning. Human artists who saw Ruby's creations felt inspired to create their own works blending human and alien aesthetic. Principals Cassidy and the delegation's engineers began collaborative projects aimed at creating hybrid technologies that would benefit both civilizations. They worked on transportation systems that could eventually allow human travel throughout the galaxy. They developed medical technologies that could extend human lifespan and improve quality of life. They created communication systems that would allow real-time contact between Earth and the alien world, even across the vast distances of space. Hope and several members of the delegation formed an exploratory team. They traveled to other locations on the alien planet, discovering ancient ruins that suggested civilizations had existed there long before Zira's people arose. These discoveries provided evidence that the universe was populated by many species at various stages of development. The exploration convinced everyone present that the galaxy was vast enough for many civilizations to exist in peace, if they chose to do so. After 6 weeks of intense cultural and scientific exchange, the delegation returned to Earth with their minds expanded and their hearts full of hope. They carried with them data and knowledge that would transform human understanding of physics, medicine, energy, and countless other fields. More importantly, they carried a message from Zira to all humanity. The message was simple but profound. Zira said that humans were welcome to become part of the galactic community. Humans had the potential to become beings of wisdom and compassion if they chose that path, but the choice would always belong to humanity itself. The universe could not force any species to evolve. Each civilization had to make the journey from survival and conquest to understanding and cooperation at its own pace and through its own choices. Linda stood with Zira and watched the human ship ascend into the purple sky. She felt a strange mixture of emotions. She had committed treason against her own government. She had walked away from a military career that was supposed to define her entire life. She had chosen an uncertain future among alien beings, yet she felt more at peace than she had ever felt before. She knew that she had made the right choice. She knew that something genuinely new was being born, something that transcended the ancient patterns of warfare and conquest that had defined human history. Zira placed a hand on Linda's shoulder in a gesture that had become familiar and meaningful to the human captain. The alien leader said that she had seen this moment in her probability calculations many times, but even probability could not capture the significance of what was happening. History, Zira said, was being written right now by the choices that both species were making. Two civilizations that had never known each other weeks ago were now becoming partners and building a better future. It was rare and beautiful and profoundly hopeful. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky above them, Linda and Zira stood together watching the horizon. Two representatives of different species united in the belief that understanding could triumph over fear, that peace could prevail over conflict, and that the universe held infinite possibilities for those beings wise enough to embrace them.